Thomas Green here with the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. On the episode today, we have Jake Morgan. Hello, Jake.
Hello.
And a welcome back to Jane Rogers. How are you doing, Jane?
I'm good, thank you. Hello.
Good. For people who haven't seen the previous episode that we did, would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so my name's Jane Rogers. I'm a parent coach. So that means that I work with parents who are having some difficulty or concern or worry about their child's behaviour. So everything from sort of high level angry meltdowns on a daily basis to sibling rivalry, bedtime, and children who just never seem to listen, which is, I think, what you want me to talk about today. And that's a really common question that I get asked. How can I get my kids just to listen and do as they're told?
Yeah, so proposed topic of discussion is how to get your kids to listen. So for those parents who are leaning forward in their chair right now, what do you say to them?
Lots. So I've got like 10 sort of to keep it sort of quite short and bite size. I've got 10 kind of top tips that I can give to parents. Some of it that parents will be already using, but some of it but be a bit new. But before I kind of launch into that, I think it's always useful to ask ourselves, as adults, so why don't some children listen? When you're asking them to do stuff, why don't they listen? And this is a common problem. Do either of you have this experience of children not listening? And have you got any ideas as to why your particular children don't listen? Right, over to you.
That's a really good question. Well, my children are now teenagers, so I think the reasons they don't listen have probably changed over the years, over the course of their child career, or whatever you'd call it.
Child career, I like that.
Yeah, I think maybe they know better now. I'm just an old fogey who, I'm not. I'm past it. I don't really know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That could be the reason now, but lots of reasons.
Yeah. Well, and you've got younger children, haven't you? So what are your thoughts on that, Thomas?
Yeah, in a little bit of prep that I did for the episode, I was thinking about the type of scenario that I could give you where I could ask your advice on, or what your advice would be in that particular scenario. And I had to think through this. So the example that I had in my head was let's say it's a particular time. So let's say it's bath time or teeth time or whatever it might be. And the little ones are playing. And that is the time, typically, where all of a sudden they no longer listen, selective hearing type thing.
Yeah.
So the shorter answer to your question would be they're not listening because they want to do something that they want to do and not something that you want them to do.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that I jotted down. So I was just thinking about this question. So yeah, children are programmed to be busy and stimulated, all the time. They're not good at doing nothing, and they're not good at doing stuff that they don't want to do or that they find boring. So that's definitely one reason, I think, why children tune you out, because they don't want to do what you're asking them to do. What else have I got? Too many orders and instructions. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So they get told to do a lot. Inevitably, some of it goes in one ear and out the other. They take longer to process things. I think adults often don't realise that children take longer to actually process instructions. Sometimes it can be a power thing. So children, like all of us, want autonomy over themselves. They want power and control, just like us adults do. And that not listening and not doing as you're asked is one of the few things that they do have control over. I find that's quite relevant with more of those strong-willed children that I work with, which is quite a lot. Also, the way that parents speak to them. I'll talk a little bit more about that. This is just a quick sort of fire of some reasons. And you, the adult, role modeling good listening skills yourself. So those are some reasons. It's not an exhaustive list at all. So what I'm going to do now is going to talk you through 10 quick ideas that any parent can use to help to make, if not solve, sort of improve this problem. And like I say, there might be some things that you're already using. And what you were talking about, bath time or bedtime, whenever it is, there's something that you have to ask them to do something, that's when they stop listening. You could be thinking about, we'll both be thinking about what, when I get to the end of this, there'll probably be something that you think, oh yeah, that resonates, I'm going to try that tonight at bath time. So number one, too many instructions. So if you think about it, children get told, asked, ordered what to do a lot. So, but you know, in the morning before they've even gone to school or nursery, whatever it is, you know, come and have your breakfast, put your bowl in the sink now, can you go and do your teeth, get your bag ready, pack your bag, put your coat on, get your shoes, stop playing with your brother, put those toys away, don't do that, get in the car, put your seatbelt, did it, you know, so many instructions and things that they've been told what to do before they even go to school. And then if they are school age, they get told a lot what to do when they're at school. It might be the same when they get home. So one of my, this tip is cut down the number of instructions that you give your child to just those that are absolutely necessary. Because otherwise you might find yourself sounding like that parent that I was kind of just then, you know, do this, do that, do the other. Sometimes parents will micromanage their children and tell them to do things even as they're about to do it, or almost as they're doing it. So if you listen to yourself in a typical day, especially with, I don't know whether it's especially with younger children, maybe it is more with younger children, but Jake, it might be with older children as well. We are issuing instructions a lot. And so therefore it's, you know, if we put ourselves in our children's shoes, what would that be like for us? So it's inevitable that there's going to be some resistance from that. So listen to yourself on a typical day. Are you giving too many instructions? What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, I think with teenagers, there are specific parts of the day where that definitely happens, i.e. the morning, come down, have breakfast, have you tidied your room, you know, have you made your bed, have you, you know, we're running late, and all of these kind of things. And around about dinner time, where you know, they're expected to lay the table and to help clear up and do the washing up, things like this. So those things always need to be, they always need a reminder, and about timeliness as well. And I think perhaps as parents, we kind of step into roles perhaps a little bit, because my wife, when you mentioned all of those things, do this and do that and do this, yeah, there are certain times a day when my wife is seemingly giving lots and lots of orders to them. And because of that, I don't have to.
Yeah.
So I sit
get
back
let off the
and
hook, do you?
yeah, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just little things, because they aren't doing kind of what's expected of them, or they're not doing it as quickly. And I guess she has a lack of confidence that they will actually achieve these things before they have to go out the door to go to school or whatever. Meaning, of course, that then she's going to have to do them. So
and there are going to be times of day when you definitely
Mm.
do have to be telling them what to do. But I'm really kind of aiming that at parents who kind of are kind of micromanaging their kids, you know, even when it's not those times of day, but other times as well. So just
you
thinking about
mentioned the child who are particularly strong-willed. If this conversation applies to any one of mine, my 3-year-old at the moment is particularly strong-willed and is doing like all the behaviors where she can emphasize a bit of control, she will. And so there is, I mean, it's totally relevant in this particular instance. And I think that I think using that principle, which is, you know, don't give orders when you don't have to, or maybe, I don't know what you think about this, maybe asking questions instead
that's
of
my
giving
next
orders.
one. Yeah,
All right,
that's
all
number,
right, spoilers.
no, it's fine. So that's great, because that's number 2. So instead of telling your child what to do all the time, so here's some examples. It's time to go. Will you go and put your shoes and coat on? So instead of that, saying it's time to go, what do you need to do? And with younger children, it can sort of give them, sometimes, you know, they can be pleased that they kind of know what they need to do now. Or let me give you some other example. Tea's ready, come to the table. So instead of giving that instruction, tea's ready, what do you need to do now? So it's about getting your child to tell you. So you haven't actually, that can be a way of cutting down the number of orders that you give these strong-willed children, because the strong-willed children don't like being told what to do so much. So instead of saying hold your knife and fork properly, say how should you hold your knife and fork? Or it's bedtime now, tidy up your things. Bedtime now, what do you need to do? Is that something that you find yourself using, Thomas?
Often, yeah, I'll try and I refer to it as coaching. So I'll coach them through it rather than demanding that they
Yeah,
do it. But one
yeah,
thing, I'm not sure if you were going to mention this, but I think it's worth mentioning and getting your thoughts on as well, which is for those that don't particularly like or resonate with this particular example, what I like to think about is what kind of person will your child turn out to be if they are receptive and if they do just kind of take every order that you give them. What kind of adult are they going to be? Like when they grow up, they're essentially going to be someone who looks for someone else to tell them what to do. And as soon as that person tells them anything, they're just going to accept it and take it as essentially an order. So,
yeah,
you want to raise
yeah,
them to be thinking human beings, thinking for themselves and coming up with their own reasons
yeah,
and
absolutely. That's a good point.
preferences. And I just thought
Yeah,
that was worth highlighting.
Yeah,
yeah.
really
And
good point.
often, children will be sort of described as, strong-willed, or always got to have the last say, or, all of these things, which are kind of like negative kind of statements about your children. But you can sort of flip it on its head and look at it in a positive way. Some of these children are going to be, they know they're strong-willed. Okay, your child knows their own mind. Yeah. Or, perhaps they're going to be a leader of men or women, or, and it's just having that strong-willed sort of personality is difficult for parents. Can be very difficult for parents, but it can stand children in good stead,
Yeah,
when they're
I think
older.
if you thought of an adult and you called them and you said they had a strong will, I don't think that would be a negative thing necessarily.
Yeah, not necessarily, no.
Mm.
So what's next? This is a really simple one that can be adapted from little small children to older ones, and it's something that if you do it consistently, it can make a difference. So when you're asking stroke telling your children what they need to do, I'm sure you've done this or you do it, you use first and then, or when and then, and using it consistently can be really useful. So first you need to tidy up your toys, then you can have a story. First, you must put your shoes away, then you can play. First, you need to stop shouting, then I will be able to listen to you. First, you need to stop talking in a whiny voice, then I can help. And that's something that can be adapted from, little children. First, you need to put your toys away, and then I can read you a story, to older ones. Often with the older ones, it's sort of when they're expecting you to do something. First, you need to empty the dishwasher because that's your chore, and then I can give you a lift into town. It's something that parents use anyway, but if it's something that, when you're telling a child to do something, if you use it really consistently, it can kind of turn things around sometimes if used with other strategies as well. Number 4, be in the same room. So we're all guilty of this, aren't we? That my son Ben, who came in to help me with the technology just now, he's grown up and gone now, he's just back for a bit. But he used to be upstairs on his computer. I would go to the bottom of the stairs and shout, Ben, tea's ready. And we all do that, don't we? We call through from a different room when we want them to do something, which is absolutely fine if Ben turns up then 2 minutes later ready for tea. But what more often happens is that you'll go to the foot of the stairs, or you'll call through from a different room, getting more and more irate because that your child can hear you and they know what you want. This child that's all upstairs on the computer, they go, yeah, in a minute, whatever, and they know what you want them to do and everyone understands. But often then the parent will end up getting really frustrated because the child really should have done as they were asked, and they will go upstairs and, I've been calling you for the last 10 minutes, will you come to the table now? Much more effective go to where your child is. That might mean going upstairs if they are upstairs. Go to where they are, arm's length, eye contact if possible, not always possible. Give the instruction in a nice, calm, polite voice. Tea's ready, will you come to the table now, please? And you are arm's length from this child that is playing their computer games, or this child that is busy doing whatever they are. And then you wait while they process that, because they take longer to process things. And then if they haven't done as you've asked, you do it again. So this might be like a little child that's playing with their toys on the floor in the sitting room. Instead of calling through to them, you go to where they are. Tea's ready, will you come to the table now? And you give them 2 chances. And then after the second chance, you guide, support, insist, get them to do what it is that you want them to do. But what do you think of that one? Because I think definitely me, I used to call through, and we do it with each other as adults as well, don't we? We call through from different rooms and then we wonder why we're being ignored.
Sounds like you've been in my house. That's what I think.
Yeah.
That's a daily occurrence.
Yeah, and it's something like I'm often saying to parents, you wouldn't do that if it was a 2 or 3-year-old. Probably you wouldn't call through, definitely to a 2-year-old or 2.5-year-old. You wouldn't call through and say, time to go now, need to come put your shoes on, and expect them to appear, because we know that's not going to happen. But going up the ages, it often doesn't happen either. But so my point is that with a much younger child, you would go to where that child is and you would get down to their level and you would give the instruction, and that would be as a way of sort of setting them up to succeed, i.e. setting you up both to succeed, i.e. the child doing what you ask and you getting the child to do it. But a lot of those things that we do with much younger children, like 2 and 3-year-olds, they work as well, and they make sense for older children, even teenagers. But you just have to.
You mentioned about asking them to do it, and perhaps waiting for their answer. There's maybe a little bit of psychology in that as well, because people like to be consistent with their commitments, and therefore if they say that they're going to do something, meaning come down and eat dinner, then they're much more likely to do it than if they didn't say that. So
yeah, and I've had a few parents. I had one dad about a couple of years ago actually, and they were having all sorts of difficulties. I think their son was about 8 years old, and I went through this session with that parent. And when I went back, like this was about 2 or 3 weeks later, I think, he actually said, I said, how are things going? He said, oh, much better. And he said that, I was quite surprised actually. He said that was a game changer, which I didn't really expect it to be, have that much effect. But I think, these were parents who were getting quite irate and frustrated quite quickly that the children weren't listening to them. So then they just made this sort of simple change. So I think that's a really useful one, because it's easy to remember. But obviously it's more time consuming to actually, every time you ask your child to do something, every time to go up the stairs or out into the, go to where they are, it's more time consuming. But if it saves, a lot of hassle and parents getting irate and children gradually realizing that when you ask them to do something, you are going to be right there asking them to do it. And it's more,
there's no claiming they couldn't hear.
Absolutely, yeah, there's very, very little sort of wriggle room. So all of this stuff, it's not rocket science. And usually when I work with parents, I usually say to them, I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. You know all this stuff. It's common sense. It's not rocket science. But one of the difficult things, most parents, I find one of the difficult things is remembering to do it. So often they'll kind of take something away from a session I've done with them, and then they'll do it, and it's good. We really like that strategy. And then a few weeks later, I'll say, how's it going with the blah strategy? And we've been forgetting to do that. But actually, any of these things that a parent decides to sort of take it and run with it, and it seems to work, it's consistency is really important. And when there's 2 parents in the household, both parents doing the same thing as well. Number 5, the way that you ask your child to do things. So stay calm and be polite. Again, it's not rocket science, is it? But how do we like to be spoken to as adults? And, you know, parents are very stressed and very busy. And I work with quite a lot of parents that do have strong-willed children and are having lots of, you know, difficulties with their strong-willed child. And they often admit to me that they find it difficult to stay calm. But so that's what this one is. So look at it from an adult perspective. So you've gone into town and you've parked a car somewhere, and someone has come out and said, don't park your car. You know, someone's come out and it said to you in a very rude tone of voice, would you move your car, please? You can see that you're not supposed to. Now get rid. No, you might get into an argument with them. You might not do what they're asking you to do, or you might do it, but, you know, grudgingly. But and either way, there's going to be bad feeling. Same scenario, parked your car somewhere, somebody comes out of the shop and says, oh, would you mind moving your car, please? Because I'm going to need that space for a delivery in a moment. And they speak to you like that in a calm and polite way. Is that going to make you feel much more likely to do as they're asking? So
absolutely,
that's yeah. With children, go to where they are, stay calm and be polite, even if they're not being polite and calm with you, which that's really, really hard, because that's just human nature, isn't it, to sort of mirror what you get.
Yeah.
Do either of you find it hard staying calm and being polite? I think it's easier perhaps with little children, because we kind of accept that little children are learning, but when they get to like 13 and 15, yours are, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. 13 and 15, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's generally the 15-year-old is all right. That's the kind of the attitude. Whereas for the 13-year-old, she's more of a handful. She's got a strong character. So she will stick up for herself and fight a cause, even when there isn't necessarily a cause that needs to be fought. But she will, that's where it can get a little bit.
And is it her that it's more tricky getting her to do things that you want her to do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, our eldest child will pretty much do everything. Sometimes not as quickly as you'd like, but she'll comply, generally speaking. She might moan a little bit occasionally, depending on what it is, homework, for example. But she's pretty good. And the youngest one, she's very bright, very strong-willed. There's that phrase again.
So one of those children that, like I was talking about earlier, that wants that power and control.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think
certainly.
Yeah.
I do want to raise, if that's okay, is I can hear, I don't agree with the objection, but I can hear the objection, which is, well, then your kids are just going to walk all over you then if you only sort of ask them nicely and this sort of thing. So what do you say to that person?
Yeah, there's no reason for parents to lose it, and shout and lose control and not be calm and polite. There's no reason that I can think of why you wouldn't do that. But having said that, there's calm and polite. Would you stop watching your TV program now and come to the table because it's tea time? There's calm and polite. But then if you're being ignored or they're being rude, then there's firm. And there's nothing wrong with parents being firm. You can, as long as you're firm but fair. Your child knew that it was going to be tea time. They knew that if they started watching that program, they might get called away. As long as you're fair. So obviously you don't want to let your children walk all over you, and that's kind of another session that I do, all about positive discipline, when you have got these strong-willed children. So yes, speak to them calmly and politely. In what I mean by that is, don't shout, because shouting is never useful. If you if you shout at your child, you know, whatever age they are, especially as they get older, it's highly likely that they will shout back, and then it will end in a shouting match. And you know, you're the adult here, and you're the one that can role model these kind of good communication skills, which I'll talk a little bit more generally about good communication skills in a moment.
I would also add the actually getting an answer from them is something which I think sometimes missed. So it's easy for, let's say, well, anyone really, if you ask them to do something and you don't get an answer, then they haven't necessarily agreed to it. Whereas and you know, little ones will drag their heels and maybe they don't want to do something, but if you ask them to commit to an answer, so sometimes I say, you know, I ask you a question, are you saying yes or are you saying no? Because if they want to
Yeah,
say no, I don't want to say you can't ever say no to me, because we already discussed, you know, they need to be able to say no and then we can talk about it. But if they don't give you an answer, then technically they haven't said no, they haven't agreed, and it's not finalized yet. But if you ask for
yeah,
a commitment somehow, then I find that can help.
yeah. Then what do you do if you say, I'm asking you to come to the table, are you saying yes or are you saying no? You will or you won't. And then they say, I'm saying no, I
I
won't come.
typically, I mean, it depends on the scenario, but typically my go-to is, you can say no to me, but that means in the future when you want something from me, I may say no to you. And I'll give them an example.
Yeah, yeah. But I do agree that it's good to get your child to do some of the talking, because so much of the time it's us adults issuing instructions and orders, and they get this at school, you know, all the time. So getting them to do some of the talking as well is really useful. Um, Staying calm and being polite. So sometimes I'll ask parents just to think about these sort of hypothetical questions with, you know, whatever it is that I'm talking about. So staying calm and being polite, is it important? Yes. Is it easy? There'll be different answers to that. Some parents will say, no, I don't find it easy at all. Some will say, do find it easy. What will happen if I do it? You know, if I am calm and polite, what will happen? What will happen if I don't do it? You know, if I lose it and shout, and you know, what will happen? And what are the barriers to me doing it? And if there are any barriers, how can they be overcome? And I'm thinking really for a lot of the parents that I work with that struggle with staying calm, you know, and because a lot of parents, you know, even a lot of good parents do shout at their children, because they've learned that that's the way to get your child to do what you want. I work with quite a lot of, I mean, all the parents that I work with are good parents, and I work with quite a proportion of those who shout, because that's how they get their child to do. So this kind of tip is just to be thinking about, you know, the importance and the usefulness of staying calm and being polite and speaking to your children in the way that you would like to be spoken to. On that same note, next tip, this is like general sort of communication, good communication skills. Are you role modeling these when you're asking your child to do something, but at other times as well? Are you taking turns to talk? Are you letting them talk and you listen, and vice versa? Do you have eye contact? Do you talk to them in a normal voice and in a respectful tone, like you would talk to a colleague or someone in a shop? Often, you know, we'll hear parents talking to their children in ways that they wouldn't talk to, you know, one of their colleagues at work.
Their worst
Um,
enemy.
yeah, yeah. And here's a useful thing: constructive criticism. So you could adapt this and use it for when you're asking your child to do something. But it's like some of us in workplaces will get sort of a sandwich sort of feedback. So it's about saying something positive. So say your child's been rude to you and you need to ask them tell them not to be rude. You might use a bit of constructive criticism, and you might say something like, I know that you're a really nice person, but the way you spoke to me just now was rather rude. Now, could you say that politely again, please? So it's not saying, don't speak like that, speak to me politely. You know, it's not just a telling off, it's saying something positive first. because especially the strong-willed children and children that don't do as they're told and children that have a lot of meltdowns, they get a lot of negative attention, and we do have to sort of tell them off, as in, you know, explain to them what they're doing, why they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. But if they hear something positive first, it's much more likely that the rest of what you're saying will go in. So I know that you're really a nice, polite person, but the way you spoke to me just now was rude. Or you're generally really good at looking after your things, but you seem to be having a bit of trouble keeping your room tidy lately. So that's a typical sort of teenage one. What do you think of that? Can you think of any examples where you might use that, say something positive and then say the thing that the child doesn't want to hear?
I think it's always a good idea to focus on positive behavior, and
Yeah.
I've always thought that there's a difference between it's quite a subtle difference seemingly, but in fact it's a really important difference between having for your personality, for the child to believe that their personality is bad, or that they have done something bad, and to do something that's unwanted, some kind of behavior that's unwanted, is a temporary thing that isn't them. It's just something that they have done. So I'm not really explaining myself very clearly.
No,
but,
I know.
but yeah, that's exactly it. I think it's important to if you are going to mention some behavior that they've done that's not desired, that at the same time you make it clear to them that, you know, they are someone who, you know, normally does wonderful things, and they've got lots of positive attributes too. So yeah.
So in this example, if you've got a child, I mean, some children tend to get rude and attitudey. Some don't, some do. That's sort of a certain age. So you're having to, you know, and it's our job to, you know, teach them about manners. So you're having to basically tell them not to talk to you in that rude voice. And how do you get them to listen and take account of what you've just said? By saying something positive first. Normally you're really polite. I'm so proud of you because you've got such nice manners normally. But just then, and you can use firm voice then. So, you know, those are just two examples, a child being rude and a child that is not tidying their room. But you can use that in all sorts of different situations. And it might be, I usually say to parents, just take one thing from our sessions together, just one thing that resonates with you, and run with it. You know, see how you get on with that one thing. Sometimes it doesn't work and you need something else. Number 7, again, this is more sort of general stuff, but thinking about how you express your emotions, how as an adult you express your emotions when you're feeling difficult emotions. And this is relevant to sort of when you're speaking to other adults, when you're speaking to your partner as well, when you're speaking to your children. So this child is supposed to have started their homework, and they know that they're supposed to have started their homework, and the adult has asked them several times and is getting quite irate that they haven't started their homework. They feel like they're being ignored. So the irateness comes out in the adult's voice. Haven't you started your homework yet? I told you 20 minutes ago to start your homework. You knew you were da-da-da-da. So that's sort of, the adult is feeling irritable, annoyed, irate, or whatever. It comes out in their voice. So again, like I said a few moments ago, you're likely to get back a sort of negative reaction when you speak, when you let your emotions come out in your voice. Now that parent, you know, they may be feeling irate, angry, annoyed, irritated, you know, whatever it is, that this child has not started their homework, when they've had lots of discussions with the child about when homework should be. But again, second way of asking the child to do their homeworks in with a view to getting them to do as you ask. I know it's hard when you have to stop your game, but I'm afraid you really do need to start your homework now. And that could be said at any sort of level of firmness, but without letting that irate, anger, irritation come across in your voice. And it's just an obvious, you know, it's the same for adults, isn't it? I mean, my husband's retired, so if I came home from a busy day out and about at work or whatever, and he had said that he would do however, you know, jobs, get a meal on the table or whatever, and I came in and he was sitting there reading the paper, I'm probably likely to feel a bit you've been sitting around all day and I've been working, da, 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 da. What am I likely to get back? So it's obviously, you know, and it goes back and forth. Yeah, I'm trying to think what I might say in that situation instead.
It made me think of when you were saying about saying things politely. And I think that's also an opportunity to act as an example. So you mentioned about how, you know, the sandwich approach, but I also think it's there at some point someone's going to be rude to them in their life. So you're going to show them how they
Yeah.
should respond, essentially. And
Yeah.
so what I would typically say is, you know, I don't talk to you in that way. And so can you please not speak to me like that?
Yeah, that's perfectly
And
reasonable.
obviously it's contingent on the fact that you're not rude to your little ones. And so it's another incentive for you, I guess, to not speak in that way.
Yeah, being a role modeling good communication skills is really, really important.
It goes even more for the clean the room thing as well, I guess. You better have a
Yeah.
clean room if you're going to tell someone to clean their room, right?
Yeah,
Oh
that's
dear.
true.
Oh, the clean room thing. Oh my goodness. Do you know what? I just diverting slightly, but my older son, I ended up just shutting the door. You know, so many parents make such a big, you know how some stuff, I just shut the door in the end because I was just turning into this nag, you know. All right, a couple more things. Allow time for transitions. If you want your child to listen and do as you ask, allow time for transitions, and don't forget that children live in a different time zone to adults, and everything takes a lot longer, especially younger children. And I don't think a lot of adults realize how long it takes children to process things. So you might think, oh, so you're asking this 8-year-old, say, or 9-year-old to put their stuff away and come and get ready for school or get ready for bed or whatever it is. And of course they know perfectly well what you want them to do. They understand it. Why should they need time to process it? So younger children definitely need time to actually process the instruction, you know, what it is that I'm being asked to do. And older children do as well. And I think the second bit of that goes like, I'm being asked to do this thing that I don't want to do. So they're not going to jump to it straight away because they don't want to do it. And it's about them, I think, coming to terms with you know, I'm really enjoying playing with my Lego, and now I'm going to have to go to bed, and I don't like going to bed, and I think my bedtime's too early anyway, blah, blah, blah. So it's not that they don't necessarily understand what you're telling them to do. It's about allowing them time to come to terms with their feelings. Take an adult example again. You've gone for a meal in a restaurant, so you've had a lovely time. You're halfway through your sticky toffee pudding, and the waiter dashes in and grabs your sticky toffee pudding off you and says, "Time to go now." And you say, "But I'm only halfway through my sticky toffee pudding." And the waiter says, "You knew what time we closed. Time to go now. Off you go." So that's a bit of a sort of extreme example, but I think that's what children feel like. A lot of the time, but we don't give them long enough to process what it is we're telling them to do, and
Yeah,
how they feel about it.
I was just going to say I don't fancy that restaurant's chances of staying open for very long with that kind of attitude. But yes,
No tip
absolutely.
for you.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, the tip would be don't do that to your to your guests.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
yeah, I mean, it's obvious, you know, you don't say to your child, right, put your Lego away now, it's time to, you know, you will give them, you know, and my next tip is give them warning, you know, give them the 5-minute warning, or, you know, whatever's appropriate, and give them reminders. So hopefully most parents are not going to dive in there. But even when given warning, you know, parent might think, yeah, I've been perfectly fair and given them warning, but it's about kind of getting into your child's head and trying to understand what it is actually like for them. And this child is playing Lego on the floor, and they've had a long day at school, and they've had to do all sorts of things that they didn't want to do at school, you know, etc. And they love the Lego. And what is an 8-year-old little boy's job to do? Play with Lego, you know, for hours and hours and hours. So yeah, those were sort of two together allowing time for transitions and 5-minute warning. I've just got the last one. I think is probably most relevant for younger children, and it's be prepared. So prepare your child for what you're going to, and it's not relevant for every situation, but I'll give you an example. I had a mum, she was on a course that I was doing, and these parents all had children ranging sort of between 3 and 6 or 7, something like that. And she had a 4-year-old, I think. And she was, you know, we got to the session about how children don't listen and how we can get them to listen and do as they ask. And she said, he's invited to this birthday party at soft play and I'm dreading it. We'll all be there and we never can get him out of soft play. Every time we take him to soft play, whatever we try, whatever we do, it ends up in a tantrum and he doesn't want to come out of soft play. And she said, I know what's going to happen. We'll be at the birthday party and then it'll be Sophie's mummy will say, it's time for tea, everyone out of soft play now. And my child will be the only one who doesn't come out. And that's difficult when you're being watched by other parents. A lot of parents feel themselves judged. So be prepared. So I kind of like talked her through how to approach this, so you don't leave it right until the day that it happens. Talk to the child in the week running up to it, so talking about the birthday party, how it's exciting, and then when Sophie's mummy says it's time to come out of soft play because it's time for birthday tea, what do you need to do? I need to come out, that sort of thing. So reminding him about it, maybe even doing some role play about it, maybe getting all the cushions off the sofa and chucking them on the floor and pretending that's soft play and having a little acting it out. And she just kept on and on repeating this to him, having these little discussions with him, even on the way to the party. Now remember, what is it you have to do when Sophie's mummy says everyone out of soft play? And she really didn't think it would make any difference. And she said, blow me down if Sophie's mummy didn't clap her hands and say, everyone out of soft play now. And this little boy came straight out of soft play. So that's just, you can probably adapt that for different situations and different ages of children, but about being prepared and preparing. And again, that's sort of getting inside your child's head. So that little boy that I spoke about a few moments ago, who's busy playing Lego and never wants to come to bed, that's sort of, that's a difficult situation that arises frequently. So why not be prepared, and do lots and lots and lots of repetition. And then of course, praise when you do get the right behavior. So that's it. That's given you quite a lot of different ways of getting your children to listen and do as they're told. Anything that you're going to go away and use, or that is particularly useful, or you're going to tell another parent about? What do you think?
I'm going to tell other parents about this episode.
Yeah, for sure. There's so many good ideas. All of them make perfect sense. And you're right, there may not be groundbreaking new ideas, but there are things that you forget, like the questions. The first one I think that you mentioned, which is, and Thomas, I think you advocate using that a lot. Asking questions is rather than making statements, because it also gets them to think about it and it gets them to make the decision for themselves. You're in answering the question, as long as they answer the right way, of course.
Yeah, so it can get tricky when what you've tried, which you were convinced was going to work, doesn't work. Yeah.
But I think
I personally liked first and then, because it's a sort of like a process for you to use. And although, I just think that once you've got that as a habit in your head, I think that would be really beneficial.
Yeah, and that's a really something to add one to remember. Those are all from, just to give myself a little plug if you don't mind, from my course, the Peaceful Parenting Master Plan. So all of those ideas were from one of the modules in my course, which people can find on my website. Obviously, more information.
Love the content, love the course title as well.
Yeah.
Just to add to something on the end of what you were referring to about preparation, and that is children are unaware of all of our social norms, and it's our job essentially to teach them what they are. So if you don't prepare them properly, then, and I've used the analogy of different cultures. So like if Jake, I used this in our episode of if you were invited to dinner in Japan and you were unaware of like the language and the social norms and everything, and you're expected to do everything correctly, but you don't know what they are. So you require someone to tell you what the norms are. And that's kind of what your example was the mum was telling the child how he should act, and now he knows he's going to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good example. Yeah, and bringing up children and when you get to sort of the discipline side of things, it is all really about teaching your children how to behave and role modeling it yourself. You know, that's a way of teaching it too.
So
I found that useful.
Thank you again for all the value today. I'm going to enjoy rewatching this. And can you tell people where they can take that course again?
Yes, if you just look on my website, www.thecambridgeparentcoach.co.uk, everything's on there. And if you don't mind, I'll just plug my book really quickly. Is that okay?
Go for it.
Go for it.
Which you know about, some people might not know about it. So Fantastic Feelings, poems, stories and activities to get children talking about their feelings, which you can never really start too early with that. So helping support their emotional literacy. And it's on Amazon, but there's lots more information on my website about that as well.
Any final thoughts, Jake?
I think, well, I just want to apologize if you can hear some snoring.
I can't,
I don't know if you can.
Is it a child or a dog?
My dog, yeah, she's a terrible snorer and she's lying right next to me.
Yeah.
In fact, no, she was outside the door. She had to come in because she was barking to get in.
What sort of dog is she?
She's a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel.
Okay, I've got a Cocker Spaniel and he snores really loudly, even when you're trying to watch the telly.
Yeah.
No, I didn't hear it.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, she's very loud. So I think it's been really, really useful. You've had a nice list of every single one of them has logic to it, and I can see can work and is really useful to do. So as Tom said, I'm looking forward to rewatching this and getting a second dose of these ideas and principles and trying to put them into practice.
Yeah, great. Glad you found it useful. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me again.
No, thank you for coming back.
For the value, yeah. And I was going to say I'm getting dog envy, but I got a 7-month-old baby, so that'll do me for now.
You've got your work cut out with them.
Yeah, really do.
All right. Thank you both.
All right. Bye then.
Thanks a lot.